Hey everybody, it's Andrew here, and today is video 4 of the Intro to the Firstborn of Faith series, where we're talking about my testimony and my first biblical fiction book, Abel, Firstborn of Faith. And today we're going to focus on the book a little bit more because we got a lot of testimony yesterday. If you haven't checked out the first 3 videos, you can find them right below, and be sure to check those out. It's a lot of fun, and I'm getting deep. I'm being vulnerable with you guys, so... Today, we're going to take a look at, the summary of the book, and I've got that written out, something you might find on the inside cover or the back page, right? So we'll start with that, and then I'll read a couple of passages, and then we're going to deep dive a little more into the setting and the motifs and some resources for you guys to learn more about this story on your own. So without further ado, let's jump right into that summary. In a world only steps removed from Eden, where the soil remembers paradise, and the sky still echoes with angelic song, Abel walks the line between obedience and wonder. As the second-born son of Adam, he bears the weight of legacy without the favor of birthright. Yet in his heart burns a devotion that will set him apart and seal his fate. Abel seeks to understand a God he has never seen, but deeply loves. He builds altars. He sings praises. He wrestles with questions of worth, sacrifice, manhood, and destiny in a world where no one has ever died. Until now. A little more to that, but we'll give you guys the teaser today. And then I wanted to real quick clarify something, because I think this is a question I've gotten a few times from some of the younger people is, well, Abel was Adam's second son, so why are you calling the book Firstborn of Faith? Well, the reason is kind of twofold. The original inspiration was that Abel's giving up the firstling of his flock and sacrifice, and that was because, the kind of the base idea. But then there's something deeper going on here, where when you really look at it, there's this repeating motif again and again throughout the Bible. I mean, it happens 3 or 4 times in Genesis alone, where God passes over the firstborn by flesh, and it chooses a firstborn, someone to favor, someone who's going to inherit the kingdom, right? Who is more rooted in obedience and faith, and humility, ultimately. So there's a few examples, like just in Genesis alone. I mean, you have Isaac over Ishmael, you have Joseph and Judah over Reuben. In Romans, you have Jacob over Esau. In 1 Samuel, you have David over Eliab and all his other brothers. You have Moses over Aaron. You have Samuel over Eli's sons. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. I'm sure there's more you guys can help me find and point out. And really what I think God's trying to say by doing this over and over again, and kind of to break the ancient historical narrative of inheritance and birthright, is that firstborn is more of a status and it's not a sequence, right? And so I think you don't have to be loud. You don't have to be first. You don't have to be the strongest to earn the favor of God. And in fact, all you have to really do is be faithful, and God sees quiet men who give their best. He still sees you. And I think that's such an important message and such a reoccurring theme, and something that I hope inspires and empowers men regardless of their birth order, right? Because I think sometimes as men, it's so the story is still the stereotype, and the story is still out there that, like, oh, the firstborn is entitled to the inheritance, right? But God doesn't see it that way, and so that's where the title Firstborn of Faith really comes from. But let's go ahead and jump into chapter 1 and just read the very first few paragraphs here. And I'm going to do a bit of a flashback thing. So I actually start the book. It opens with a very critical moment in Abel's life where he's a little bit older, and then we jump back to his childhood from here. But just that little teaser opening, right? The flame danced, even as the wind stood still. Abel winced as it flickered, finally feeling the full weight of his decision. Amber light, reflecting in the tears, caught at the edges of his lashes as the moment drew near. The lamb beside him nuzzled against his leg, delicate, pure, perfect. His fingers gripped the rough stone of the altar, knuckles white, as the flames rose higher. Behind him, the world remained wide and wild. Before him, to the west, rose the faint heavenly glow of Eden. He could not see the cherubim from where he stood, but he knew the stories well. The fire, the sword, the fall. "Do you think he sees us now?" he whispered. His father, silent beside him, didn't answer. Adam seemed less willing to talk about life before his exile with each passing day. He rarely looked up and would mutter under his breath, "Cursed is the ground." Abel didn't press the issue. The fire changed suddenly, shattering the silence. Not a roar, but a welcome. The flames beckoned to Abel. Heat curled around his skin like a breath. The lamb was consumed in an instant, and any doubts with it. At that moment, Abel knew he had acted righteously by choosing to sacrifice the lamb. He was overcome with the presence of the Lord. Adam nodded stoically in approval, and Abel felt peace wash over him. He closed his eyes and prayed, "Yahweh, remember us." So yeah, that's the opening scene there, just to kind of set the stage and hopefully get you guys a little more excited for the book. I want to talk about, first of all, let me share some great resources with you guys. Some people who really inspire me and who I think can help you dig a little bit deeper because, like I said, this is one, maybe 2 pages in the Bible. And of course, it's great to read that. You can grab it in Genesis. I would just start at the beginning and read to chapter 4 or 5, and you'll get the whole story and even the events leading up to it. If you've never read it, easiest thing to knock out. Should take you 10-15 minutes and it'll give you a really good basis. But some people I like, kind of a new influencer, but someone who I think is just so in touch and so anointed and so he gets it, right? And that's Johnny Chang. If you haven't seen him, he preaches to like inmates basically and everyone at this point now, but he's a former inmate, and check out Johnny. He's awesome, and he does great coverage of Cain and Abel and the garden and all of Genesis, really. Billy Graham, of course, The Way of Cain. If you're into a little more old school stuff, that's a great talk he does about these particular events in the Bible. The Bible Show with Sam and Will is another one I like because you have these 2 guys, one's a little bit older, one's a little bit younger, and they just play off of each other so well. And I think they break things down really simply. If you're not looking to for some of the older language, or, you don't want to go so deep with the motifs, but they can really help you gain a deeper understanding of the story without overwhelming. And then the last one would be Manis Friedman, the rabbi. I think he probably has the deepest understanding and the deepest analysis of the story of all of Genesis, really, but particularly of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. So check him out as well if you want to get deeper on this by yourself, and I think everybody should. So with that, yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the setting, right? Obviously, we're in a post-Eden world. Things are new, things are wild, things are exciting for the boys, but probably very difficult for their parents coming from Eden, and shouldering kind of the burden of taking on this basically this challenge, this new way of life, right? And so we're dealing with the gates of Eden being visible but guarded. And so, it's kind of like this place that the boys know not to go towards, know not to try to get in, but it's still there and they can still see it and they still have these stories about it, right? And then they're living on the first familial homestead. So there's farming, they're raising animals, they're learning how to work the land and live this new life outside of paradise. And it's really the parents are having now to train the boys and teach the boys and bring them up because, assumably they've spent a little time out here since being exiled before the boys were born. And so it's really kind of like a classic, story of this familial homestead is kind of how I picture it. Then we have, of course, another big spiritual center point of the story is going to be the sacrificial altar site where both Cain and Abel are giving their sacrifices. They're being led by their father and they're communing with God in this place, right? So that'll be another kind of big center point of the setting. And then I was thinking of having the boys go to Havilah, which is mentioned in Genesis as an area nearby where one of the rivers is flowing through or around, and it has gold and onyx and resin. So I thought it would be kind of a fun adventure if the boys at some point, in their youth or, while they're teenagers, travel out here for some reason and have a bit of adventure together, and we can kind of explore and play on their relationship and possibly, how when they get along and maybe when they don't, and some of the tensions that come with siblings, of course, because I just think it'll be really fun and a really relevant piece to explore for the young people who might be reading this. So one question I get, I think, from the younger crowd as well is, if Eden was on Earth and all of this happened and they were banished, why can't we find it today, right? So I explained to him, there was 1,656 years until the flood, between the fall of man and the flood. So there was plenty of time for things to change, things to be different. But not only that, then the flood came and the entire surface of the earth was remolded and things changed in an instant, right? And so I think that one's pretty easy for them to grasp and easy to understand once you explain the kind of the timeline of things and look at that genealogy. Another thing I find so fascinating about the genealogy is that we know Adam lived for 930 years, but if you map it all out with everybody's when they had sons, right, when the next child was born, Adam was still around for 8 generations after him, after Seth. So he would have lived at the same time as Lamech, who was Noah's father, and they would have been crossover and they would have had time. So it's like Adam was only 1 generation removed from the flood, and so these stories would have endured and survived. And it was like we since so much time has passed, we picture like a lot of separation between these generations, but the truth is Adam could have told them about the garden. They would have had vivid, detailed understanding of Adam's life and his relationship with God. And so would have been very easy for that to come down to Noah and then carry through, to the new world and to us. So it really makes a lot of sense, and it's really just kind of fun to look at it through that lens. So as far as the characters, right? We have Adam and Eve, who will be between like 100 and 120, 130 years old for most of the story, because we know Seth was born, their third son, when Adam was 130 years old. So they'll really be kind of like in a very mature place, but again, things were obviously different back then. The lifespan was different back then. And so that'll kind of be where they sit for the story. And then I'll have the boys start off young, but then move pretty quickly into their teen years and kind of have the story really flush itself out, in their late teens, early 20s. And yeah, that's really all I have for you guys today. I thank you so much for tuning in and checking it out. I hope you'll stick with me. I got plenty more coming before the end of the year. We'll keep fleshing out these chapters. I'll get more into some stories from myself and my life that I am really excited to share with you. And I just appreciate you so much for giving it a listen, giving me a chance. Every like, every share, every comment helps. So keep it up. And I really, really just want to say thank you for even checking this out.